Darius Cole was 41 years old, a structural engineer who had spent 15 years building everything from the ground up. His career, his savings, and the four-bedroom home he designed himself. He believed in doing things right. He believed in his marriage. So when his wife Amber told him her mother Patricia was dying, a rare heart condition, experimental surgery, $500,000 that insurance wouldn't touch, Darius didn't hesitate. He liquidated his entire brokerage account. He pulled $180,000 against the home he built with his own hands, because that's what a good man does for his family. But on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, leaving a job site early, Darius stopped at a red light on Cascade Road and watched his dying mother-in-law pull out of a Whole Foods parking lot behind the wheel of a pearl-white Porsche, laughing. Amber in the passenger seat, laughing with her. He sat through 2 green lights, and in that stillness, something shifted in Darius Cole that would never shift back. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Darius Cole sat at his custom-built kitchen island, the morning sun streaming through the windows he'd precisely positioned to catch the best light. Blueprints spread before him. He traced load-bearing calculations with his finger while taking measured sips of coffee from his Atlanta engineering alumni mug. The four-bedroom craftsman around him was more than a house. It was physical proof of everything his father had taught him about building things that last. He glanced up at the copper wind chimes swaying on the back deck. Another small job for his growing weekend list. The gutters needed cleaning, too. Darius pulled his phone out and added both items to his tasks. Right below, pick up Amber's dry cleaning and check Mom's grave flowers. The sound of Amber's heels clicked down the hallway, and he noticed her barely touched coffee cup sitting cold on the counter. Without a word, he stood and popped it in the microwave, timing it perfectly so it would be the right temperature when she reached the kitchen. "You always know," Amber said, accepting the warm mug with a smile that took just a fraction too long to reach her eyes. 7 years of marriage had taught Darius every curve of that smile, even if some angles didn't quite add up. "Someone has to take care of you," he replied, watching her settle onto one of the bar stools he'd reinforced himself after noticing a slight wobble last month. No children yet. Amber always had timing concerns. First it was her career, then the market, then wanting to travel. Darius never pushed. Good foundations take time. His eyes drifted to the collection of birthday cards displayed on their refrigerator. The latest one from Patricia, Amber's mother, stood out in its generic beige envelope. "To my daughter and her wonderful husband." The same phrasing she'd used for 7 years. Like a template, never quite personalized. Darius had always attributed it to Patricia's reserved nature. "The specialist called," Amber said suddenly, her voice catching. She set down her coffee, hands trembling slightly. "About Mom's tests." Darius straightened, engineer's mind already calculating possibilities. Patricia had been having episodes for weeks now. Shortness of breath, fatigue, chest pains. What did they say? "It's her heart." Amber's fingers twisted around her wedding ring. "Some rare autoimmune condition. The regular treatments won't work. They're saying," she swallowed hard, "they're saying she needs experimental surgery. It's the only option." Darius moved around the island to stand beside her, one hand steady on her shoulder. "Which hospital? Who's the specialist?" Amber reached for her purse, pulling out a glossy pamphlet and a business card with a gold-embossed medical logo. "Dr. Harrison at Atlanta Memorial's Advanced Cardiac Unit. He's one of only 3 doctors in the country who performs this procedure." She slid a preliminary quote on hospital letterhead across the granite countertop. "Insurance won't cover experimental procedures. The total cost," her voice wavered, "it's $500,000. Darius picked up the paperwork, examining it with the same attention he gave structural analysis. The letterhead looked legitimate. The medical terminology was precise. The cost breakdowns were detailed and logical. Everything aligned perfectly, like steel beams in a well-designed frame. "Show me everything," he said quietly. For the next 20 minutes, Amber walked him through each document: treatment protocols, success rates, payment requirements. Darius asked questions like the engineer he was: methodical, thorough, exact. Each answer fit seamlessly into place. Finally, he opened his laptop and pulled up his financial accounts. The numbers were clear: $340,000 in his brokerage account, inheritance from his father, combined with 15 years of careful saving. Their home had enough equity for $180,000 HELOC. He began calculating liquidation timelines and interest rates, his fingers moving across the keyboard with certainty. "We'll make it work," he said, already drafting transfer authorizations. "Family takes care of family." Amber touched his arm, her fingers light. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Darius nodded, focused on the numbers. His father had taught him that anything worth building required sacrifice. As he authorized the first transfer, he thought about Patricia's quiet strength during Sunday dinners, her kind notes at Christmas, the way she always asked about his work with genuine interest. The math was simple. This was what family did. Monday morning arrived with a gray drizzle that matched the weight in Darius's chest as he dialed his financial advisor's number. He'd been with Meridian Investments since his first engineering job, building his portfolio one careful deposit at a time. "Darius, this is quite a substantial liquidation," Marcus said, concern evident in his voice. 15 years of growth. "Are you sure about this?" "Family emergency," Darius replied, his voice steady. "I need the full amount transferred to this medical payment account." He read off the numbers Amber had provided, each digit precise and memorized. "It'll take about 3 business days to process everything," Marcus explained. "There will be some tax implications we should discuss." "Whatever it takes," Darius said. "Just make it happen." The first wire transfer went through that Thursday. $340,000 vanishing from his brokerage account into the specialized medical payment account Amber had set up. She'd explained that Dr. Harrison's private practice required direct payment channels for experimental procedures. The paperwork looked clean, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a high-end medical operation. Over the next 3 weeks, Darius made 4 separate draws on the home equity line of credit, totaling $147,000. Each withdrawal came with its own carefully documented reason: additional preoperative testing, $28,000, specialized cardiac monitoring equipment rental, $35,000, supplemental anesthesiologist fees because of Patricia's complex case, $42,000, extended hospital stay preparation, $42,000. Amber managed every detail, producing documentation that looked exactly like what a major hospital would generate: insurance denial letters, pre-authorization forms, specialist consultations. Each paper trail was impeccable, each deadline pressing but not quite urgent enough to seem suspicious. Between transfers, Darius drove to Decatur twice to visit Patricia. Her small ranch house looked exactly as it always had, except now she moved through it like a ghost of herself. She answered the door in a thick cardigan despite the Georgia heat, her face pale and drawn. "My sweet son-in-law," she said, her voice wavering as she hugged him. "You're too good to us." During his first visit, Darius noticed her porch railing was loose. Without being asked, he returned the following weekend with his tools. The summer sun beat down as he replaced rotted wood and tightened bolts, while Patricia watched from her kitchen window, occasionally bringing him water with trembling hands. "The son I never had," she called him, tears in her eyes. "God knows what we'd do without you." That Sunday, Aunt Evelyn came for dinner. She sat at their dining room table with the quiet authority that 20 years on the family court bench had given her, watching Amber serve dinner with eyes that missed nothing. Darius noticed how his aunt took in every detail: The way Amber's hand lingered too long on his shoulder. The precise timing of her concerned glances toward the phone, waiting for updates from the hospital that never seemed to come during dinner. As Evelyn prepared to leave, she paused in the foyer. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp. "Darius, have you spoken to Patricia's doctor directly?" "Amber handles all of that," he replied, helping his aunt with her coat. "She has the medical background to understand the terminology better than I would." Evelyn nodded once, saying nothing more. But something in her silence felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Later that night, Darius sat at his desk, reviewing the HELOC balance on his laptop. The numbers glowed back at him. $147,000 drawn, $33,000 remaining available. His savings were depleted. Their home equity was nearly maxed out. Each monthly payment would stretch their budget to its limit. But when he thought about Patricia's grateful tears, about the way she called him son, about Amber's dedication to her mother's care, it felt worth every dollar. His father had always said that a man's true character showed in how he handled life's heaviest loads. Darius closed the laptop and walked quietly to their bedroom. Amber was already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. He slipped under the covers beside her, exhausted but certain he was doing the right thing. The weight of their financial situation pressed down on him, but he was built to carry such burdens. That's what good sons-in-law did. He drifted off, unaware that every document, every medical form, every specialist's letterhead he'd paid against had been crafted by the woman sleeping peacefully beside him. Tuesday afternoon hit Atlanta with the kind of humidity that made everything feel slower, heavier. Darius stood in the half-finished skeleton of the new medical center, checking his watch as the site supervisor explained that the steel delivery wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. "No point keeping the crew waiting around," the supervisor said, wiping his forehead. "Might as well call it." Darius nodded, gathering his blueprints and hard hat. It was rare for him to leave a site early, but with no materials to inspect, there wasn't much else to do. As he walked to his truck, his mind drifted to the HELOC payment due Friday. The numbers turned over in his head. $1,840 monthly, due in 3 days. Their account was running thin. Traffic moved sluggishly down Cascade Road, brake lights blinking in the afternoon haze. Darius drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, mentally reviewing their budget. They'd need to be careful with groceries this month. Maybe delay the gutter cleaning another few weeks. The light ahead turned red, and he eased to a stop in front of the Peachtree Station shopping plaza. The Whole Foods parking lot stretched out to his left, cars circling for spots like lazy vultures. A pearl-white Porsche Macan pulled smoothly out of the exit lane. The world slowed down. Behind the wheel sat Patricia Whitfield. Not pale, not frail, not dying. She wore oversized sunglasses and a cream-colored silk blouse, her head thrown back in laughter. Her movements were fluid, confident. No trace of the woman who winced at her own porch steps. In the passenger seat, Amber, his wife. Her profile was unmistakable, the delicate curve of her neck as she turned toward her mother, sharing whatever joke had them both so amused. The Porsche glided past his truck, neither woman glancing his way. The light turned green. Darius didn't move. A horn honked behind him. He barely heard it. His engineer's mind, trained to analyze structural integrity, to identify points of failure, began working backward through the past 3 months. Each wire transfer, each medical form, each careful explanation. The light cycled to red again, then green. He sat motionless. Some part of him reached for rational explanations. Maybe Patricia had good days. Maybe the car belonged to someone else. Maybe. But he knew Amber's laugh. Knew the way she tilted her head back when something truly amused her. The way her hand always came up to cover her mouth. He had memorized these details over 7 years of marriage. The way a man memorizes the blueprint of his own home. He did not reach for his phone, did not call her, did not text. Something shifted inside him, the same cold precision he felt when examining a compromised foundation, when calculating load-bearing requirements. This was no longer about emotion. This was about architecture. 20 minutes later, he parked outside Clint Okafor's office building. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like ascending through molasses. Through the glass walls of Clint's corner office, he could see his oldest friend on the phone, gesturing as he spoke. Darius sat in one of the client chairs and waited. Clint glanced up, registered his presence with a slight nod, but continued his call. They'd known each other since college, long enough that Clint could read the stillness in Darius's posture, the careful blankness of his expression. When Clint finally hung up, he leaned back in his chair and waited. "I need your help." Darius's voice was steady. For the next 15 minutes, he laid out everything: the diagnosis, the transfers, the HELOC, the documentation, each detail precise, chronological, stripped of emotion. When he finished with the Porsche sighting, Clint was already typing. "Give me the account number for the medical payments," Clint said quietly. Darius recited it from memory. 11 minutes. That's how long it took Clint to pull up the registration details. His screen reflected in his glasses as he read. "The account is registered to Witt Medical Solutions, LLC," Clint said, his voice carefully neutral. "Incorporated 8 months ago. Principal agent listed as Amber Cole. 2 months before Patricia's diagnosis. 2 months before the first mention of any heart condition." Darius drove home through the deepening evening. Amber's car was already in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, he could see her moving around, preparing dinner. He got out of his truck, climbed the porch steps he'd built himself, and opened their front door. "You're home early," Amber called out. The kitchen smelled like garlic and herbs. He crossed to her, kissed her cheek. "Smells amazing," he said. "Just trying that new recipe you mentioned," she smiled, stirring the pan. "How was work?" "Fine," he replied, setting the table as she finished cooking. They ate dinner together, talking about nothing important. He complimented the food, asked about her day, listened to her plans for the weekend. Later, lying in bed beside her, Darius stared at the ceiling with absolute stillness. Her breathing had evened out into sleep, but he remained awake, his mind as clear and cold as steel. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, matching Darius's mood as he parked outside Clint's office building at 7 a.m. His friend was already there, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, empty coffee cups scattered across his desk like fallen soldiers. "You didn't sleep," Darius said. It wasn't a question. "Neither did you," Clint replied, turning his monitor. "Sit down. This gets worse." Darius settled into the same chair he'd occupied yesterday, his movements measured and controlled. Clint pulled up a spreadsheet, each row highlighting a different transfer, each column telling its own story of betrayal. Total received by Witt Medical Solutions, $487,000. Clint began, his voice clinical. "Your brokerage liquidation, the HELOC draws, and that last $75,000 from your savings. Here's where it went." He clicked through 3 different bank statements. First destination, monthly payments of $3,200 to Highland House Apartments in Buckhead. Unit 1507. Lease executed in Amber's name only. First payment made 6 weeks ago. Darius's hands remained flat on his knees. She was building an exit. Yes. Clint moved to the next screen. Second destination, recurring transfers to a personal account belonging to Dion Whitfield. Patricia's nephew, your wife's cousin, the guy you met at those 2 family barbecues. How much? $84,000 total. Regular payments starting 3 days after your first wire. Darius remembered Dion, tall, quiet, always hanging back at family gatherings. He'd seemed shy. Now Darius wondered if it had been guilt. Third destination, Clint continued, is Amber's personal spending account. Regular transfers, usually $5,000 to $10,000 each. Total of $167,000 so far. The precision of the numbers felt almost surreal. Clean debits and credits documenting the systematic dismantling of everything he'd built. Darius absorbed each figure with the same attention he gave to load calculations, letting the math tell its story. "There's more," Clint said quietly. He opened a new window. "I ran a broader search on Amber last night. 3 years ago, in Macon, a man named Walter Grimes filed a civil suit against her for fraudulent misrepresentation, claimed $62,000 in damages related to a joint business investment. What happened? Settled out of court under NDA. But here's the key part. Grimes was her husband. 8-month marriage ended in divorce right after the settlement. The room seemed to grow very still. Darius's engineer's mind assembled the pattern. Amber's first marriage lasting 8 months. Their own courtship taking exactly 9 months from first date to proposal. Every timeline precisely calculated. "She's done this before," Darius said. "Yes, and she's gotten better at it." The Grimes scheme was smaller, messier. This time, Clint gestured at his screens. "This is refined, professional." Darius stood, gathering the printed copies Clint had prepared. "Thank you," he said simply. "Where are you going?" "To see Evelyn." The drive to his aunt's house took 40 minutes in morning traffic. Evelyn opened her door before he could knock, as though she'd been waiting. Maybe she had been. She'd always seen things coming before anyone else. Without a word, Darius laid the documents on her kitchen table. Bank statements, LLC filings, the Macon judgment, apartment lease. Evelyn put on her reading glasses and began reviewing each page methodically, her expression unchanging. The wall clock ticked away 10 minutes. 15, 20. Finally, she looked up. "What do you want?" "Everything back," Darius said without hesitation. "And then some." Evelyn nodded once, picked up her phone and dialed. "Sandra, Evelyn Moss, I need a favor." She listened for a moment. "Yes, it's important. I'm putting my nephew on now." She handed Darius the phone. Sandra Pike's voice was sharp, professional. They scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. 2 hours later, in Sandra's downtown office, the attorney laid out their options with brutal clarity. Wire fraud, marital fraud, theft by deception against both Amber and Patricia, depending on how deep we can prove Patricia's participation. This isn't just a divorce case. This is a criminal referral waiting to happen. She leaned forward. "Don't move any money. Don't confront her. Don't change anything. Come back in 48 hours with your bank statements for the past 5 years and every piece of correspondence you have about these medical payments. Can you do that?" Darius nodded. That evening, he pulled into his driveway just as Amber was setting the table for dinner. She smiled at him. That same warm smile he'd trusted for 7 years. "How was dinner?" she asked. "Fine," he said, hanging up his keys. "Just fine." 2 mornings after meeting Sandra, Darius sat across from Amber at their kitchen island, watching steam rise from his coffee. The morning light caught the granite countertop, throwing tiny sparkles across its surface. He took a careful sip, then set his cup down with deliberate casualness. "Something interesting came up at work yesterday," he said, keeping his voice neutral. Amber looked up from her phone, eyebrows raised. "Oh? The Charlotte project. They're having trouble getting it off the ground. Issues with the local team." He spread cream cheese on his bagel, movements measured and unhurried. "They asked if I'd consider relocating to oversee it directly. 2 years, maybe less, if we can get it back on schedule." Amber's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Her reaction was perfect, concern mixed with surprise, exactly what a loving wife should show. "Charlotte? That's pretty far, baby." "They're offering a relocation bonus," Darius continued, watching her face with the same attention he gave to stress points in steel beams. $75,000, lump sum, paid up front. He saw it. The tiniest flicker in her eyes. There and gone so fast anyone else would have missed it. But he was looking for it now. When would they need an answer? She asked, setting her fork down. End of the week. I wanted to discuss it with you first, of course. Amber reached across the island and touched his hand. Her fingers were cool against his skin. That's a big change for us, she said softly. For our life here. Darius squeezed her hand gently, marveling at how natural the gesture still felt even now. I know. It's just, with everything going on with your mom's treatment. She withdrew her hand and looked down at her plate. The morning light caught her wedding ring, the diamond throwing tiny rainbows across the ceiling. They sat in silence for several moments. I should get ready for work, Darius said finally, standing up. He kissed her cheek before heading upstairs, knowing what would come next. It took exactly 23 hours. The following morning, Amber caught him as he was getting ready to leave. I've been thinking about the Charlotte offer, she said, leaning against the doorframe. About the bonus. Darius adjusted his tie, waiting. I know it's not what you wanted to use it for, she continued, her voice gentle. But Mama needs this. The latest round of treatments. There's still a balance. He turned to face her. How much is left? Just under 70,000. She stepped closer, touching his arm. I hate asking, baby. I do. But if it could help save her, Darius nodded slowly. Let me handle it today. That afternoon, he walked into Atlanta First National and requested a cashier's check for $75,000, made out to Witt Medical Solutions, LLC. The teller processed it efficiently, handing him the blue and silver check in a protective sleeve. Amber's eyes welled up when he gave it to her that evening. You're an angel, she whispered, kissing him. Mama will be so grateful. Within 45 minutes, Clint's text arrived. Deposited. Full amount, 3:47 p.m. That Saturday, Darius drove to Decatur alone. He hadn't told Amber he was going, a deliberate break in pattern. When he pulled up to Patricia's house, he started the voice recorder on his phone before slipping it into his shirt pocket. Patricia answered his knock, wearing yoga pants and a fitted athletic top. Her face showed healthy color, her movements fluid and strong. When she registered who was standing there, surprise flashed across her features before she caught herself, immediately slouching and raising a hand to her throat. Darius, she said, her voice suddenly weak. A carefully timed cough followed. I wasn't expecting. Please, come in. He followed her inside, noting how she now moved with artificial slowness, like an actor who had forgotten they're blocking mid-scene. They sat in her living room, making small talk about the weather, the neighborhood, a new restaurant down the street. Patricia maintained her performance, occasional coughs, wincing when she shifted position, touching her chest periodically as if checking for pain. After 15 minutes, Darius stood to leave. At the door, he turned to her with a warm smile. Patricia, he said softly, I want you to know something. No matter what happens, I don't regret a single dollar I spent trying to save you. Her mask slipped, just for a moment, just enough. A flicker of something crossed her face before she could catch it. You're a good man, Darius, she managed. He smiled. I know. Walking to his car, he stopped the recording. The entire exchange was captured. Her initial healthy movements, the sudden shift to illness performance, and, most importantly, that telling moment at the end. That evening, he sent both the recording and the deposit confirmation to Sandra. Her response came within minutes. We're ready. Darius read the message once, then placed his phone face down on the nightstand. 3 days later, Sandra's office felt unusually still. The morning light filtered through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across her mahogany desk. She gestured for Darius to sit, her expression carefully neutral. Our investigator completed the title search on your property, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. Standard procedure for civil discovery preparation. But we found something you need to see. Darius opened the folder. The document inside was familiar. A power of attorney he'd signed 3 years ago when Amber needed to handle some routine real estate matters while he was overseeing a project in Savannah. He'd forgotten about it completely. "Turn to page 4, Sandra said quietly. There it was, a trust filing from 4 months ago. Amber had attempted to transfer their home into a trust with herself as sole beneficiary. The only reason it failed was a clerical error. Someone had transposed 2 numbers in the parcel ID. She would have owned everything, Sandra explained. The house, the equity, all of it. The filing was attempted right around the time the first large medical payments began. Darius stared at the document. The signature at the bottom, his signature from 3 years ago, looked foreign now, like something written in another language. "I'll give you a moment," Sandra said, standing. "When you're ready, we'll go through the rest." In his car in the parking garage, Darius gripped the steering wheel. The leather creaked under his fingers. He thought about the morning he'd signed that power of attorney, Amber bringing him coffee, kissing his cheek, saying she'd handle everything while he was away. He thought about every dinner she'd cooked, every time she'd laughed at his jokes, every moment he'd believed was building something real. He set his phone timer for 1 hour. For 60 minutes, he allowed himself to feel it all. The humiliation, the grief, the crushing weight of understanding that to her he had never been a husband. He had been a transaction, an asset to be drained and discarded. When the timer chimed, he wiped his face once, straightened his tie, and walked back inside. Clint was waiting in Sandra's office. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "What else do we need?" Darius replied. Sandra laid out the civil complaint. 43 pages covering wire fraud, conversion, unjust enrichment, and fraudulent inducement of marriage. "The DA's Economic Crimes Unit has everything they need for criminal charges," she said. "And we just heard from Dion Whitfield." "Patricia's nephew?" Darius asked. "The investigators approached him yesterday. He's already cooperating. Wants to minimize his exposure. Says he can document every payment he received and what they were for." Clint nodded. His bank records matched the LLC disbursements perfectly. He was their errand runner, setting up accounts, moving money, handling paperwork. He'll make an excellent witness. The phone on Sandra's desk buzzed. "Judge Moss, on line 1, her assistant announced. Evelyn's voice filled the room on speakerphone. "Gloria just left my house," she said. "I showed her everything. She's, well, you can imagine." "How did she take it?" Darius asked. "She went very quiet for about 5 minutes. Then she said, 'Tell me what you need from me.' She's providing a sworn affidavit right now, confirming Patricia had no diagnosis, no treatment, nothing. She was at Patricia's birthday dinner 6 weeks ago, the one Amber told you Patricia was too sick to host." Sandra made a note. "That's the last piece we needed. Every witness is positioned. Every document is authenticated. We're ready for tomorrow evening." Darius drove home in the fading light, his mind quiet. He found Amber in the kitchen, scrolling through design websites on her tablet. "Baby," she said, turning the screen toward him. "What do you think about updating the backsplash? I was thinking maybe something in a herringbone pattern." He looked at the kitchen they'd designed together, the granite countertops, the soft close cabinets, the space where they'd cooked countless meals, where he'd warmed her coffee every morning while she was planning to take it all away. "Could be nice," he said. "Show me what you're thinking." Steam rose from the chicken marsala as Darius served 2 portions. Amber smiled up at him, the pendant light catching the gold flecks in her brown eyes, the same eyes that had watched him sign away his inheritance, his equity, his future. "This looks amazing," she said, taking a delicate bite. "You always make it better than the restaurant." He sat across from her at their kitchen island, the granite cool under his forearms. "The secret's in the timing," he replied. "You have to let the sauce reduce just right." Amber launched into a story about her day, something about a client meeting. A funny moment with her assistant. Her hands moved animatedly as she spoke, her wedding ring catching the light. He wondered if she'd practiced these movements in front of a mirror, the way actresses rehearse their marks. He thought about Walter Grimes in Macon. Did Walter sit across from her like this too, in those final days? Did he watch her laugh and gesture and plan their future while knowing she'd already mapped his destruction? Did she tell Walter stories about her day while his retirement savings drained into her accounts? "Earth to Darius," Amber said, touching his hand. "You okay? You seemed far away for a minute." "Just tired," he said, squeezing her hand back. "Big day tomorrow." "The Charlotte project?" she asked, and he noted how smoothly she referenced the lie he'd fed her, how naturally she wore it. "Yeah," he said. "Lot of moving parts to coordinate." They finished dinner. Amber insisted on cleaning up since he'd cooked. He watched her load the dishwasher, humming to herself. Every movement was perfect. The devoted wife, the partner, the woman he'd believed in completely. Her performance never wavered. "I think I'll head up to bed," she said, kissing his cheek. "Don't stay up too late worrying about tomorrow. Everything will work out exactly like it's supposed to." He waited until he heard the shower running upstairs. Then he stepped onto the back deck and called Clint. "Hey," Clint answered on the first ring. "Everything set?" "Yeah," Darius said, looking up at the stars. "Just needed to talk." Silence stretched between them, the comfortable quiet of old friendship. "How are you holding it together?" Clint finally asked. "Because I have to," Darius said. "Because if I fall apart now, she wins even this part. Even these last few hours." "That's not strength," Clint replied. "That's engineering. You're treating it like a load test, applying pressure gradually, measuring the response, documenting every crack." Darius laughed. A real laugh, his first in weeks. "When did you get so philosophical?" "I spend too much time with numbers. Makes a man contemplative." They talked about nothing important after that. Basketball scores, a new restaurant Clint tried, ordinary things that felt like anchors in a shifting world. The next morning, Darius drove to Evelyn's house as dawn broke over Atlanta. She opened the door before he knocked, already dressed for court, though she hadn't served on the bench in years. "Coffee's ready," she said, leading him to her kitchen. He sat at her small breakfast table while she poured 2 cups. Morning light streamed through lace curtains, casting delicate shadows across the worn tablecloth. "Let me tell you about a case I had," she said, settling across from him. "Must have been 20 years ago now. Man discovered his wife had been systematically draining their accounts. He had the bank statements, the transfer records, everything. But he confronted her too soon. Got angry, got sloppy. By the time the case reached my courtroom, she'd cleaned up her paper trail, moved assets, created just enough reasonable doubt." She took a sip of coffee. She walked away clean. Not because she was innocent, because he let his pain push him into acting before the trap was ready. Evelyn reached across the table and gripped his hand. "You've done it right, Darius. Every document authenticated, every witness positioned, every escape route closed. Now, go be everything she decided you weren't." Darius finished his coffee in silence, letting her words settle into his bones. When he stood to leave, Evelyn straightened his tie, a maternal gesture that nearly broke his careful composure. "Thank you," he said simply. "Go get your life back," she replied. Darius walked out of Evelyn's front door into the bright morning. He got into his car, adjusted the mirror, and drove steadily toward the evening ahead, and everything it would reclaim. Amber chatted easily during the drive to Evelyn's house, her hand resting on Darius's thigh as he navigated the familiar streets of their neighborhood. "It's sweet that you want to be more involved with Mama's recovery," she said, squeezing his leg gently. "She's been asking about you." The late afternoon sun caught her wedding ring, sending prisms dancing across the dashboard. Darius watched them flicker and fade, thinking about the careful architecture of lies that Ring represented. 7 years of performed devotion, calibrated to extract maximum value before the planned demolition. "Family's important," he replied simply, turning onto Evelyn's tree-lined street. The Craftsman House came into view. Solid, dignified, built in 1932, and still standing true because someone had taken the time to do it right. Darius parked in the circular driveway behind a familiar Mercedes. Amber's smile flickered for just a moment when she recognized Gloria's car. "I didn't know your sister was joining us," she said, to cover the hesitation. "Family dinner," Darius reminded her, opening her door with the same courtesy he'd always shown. The same courtesy she'd leveraged against him for nearly a decade. They walked up the brick path to Evelyn's front door. Darius noticed Amber's stride change subtly as they approached, the microscopic tells of someone preparing to perform warmth. He'd learned to read those signals too late, but he'd learned them well. Evelyn opened the door before they knocked. "Come in," she said, her judge's composure perfect. "Everyone's waiting in the dining room." Amber stepped into the foyer, her heels clicking against hardwood. She registered Patricia already seated at the table, then Gloria beside her, then Clint's steady presence, and finally, Sandra Pike's unmistakable professional stance. Understanding dawned in her eyes like a sunrise she hadn't planned for. She pivoted toward the door. Darius's voice, quiet, measured, precise, stopped her mid-turn. "Sit down, Amber. You don't have anywhere to be that matters more than this." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Amber smoothed her skirt and took the indicated chair, her movements fluid and controlled. Even now she was performing, adjusting her strategy rather than abandoning it. Sandra Pike placed a thick document on the mahogany table. The civil complaints cover page lay face up, names stark against legal letterhead. Darius began speaking in the same tone he used to explain structural loads to clients. Clear, direct, educational. "The LLC was incorporated 8 months ago," he said. 2 months before Patricia's fictional diagnosis. $487,000 transferred through Witt Medical Solutions. The Buckhead apartment leased in your name only. The attempted property transfer using my power of attorney. The payments to Dion, who's already speaking to investigators. Amber's face remained composed, but her fingers twitched almost imperceptibly against the tablecloth. Patricia stared at her water glass as though it held answers. Then Gloria spoke. Her voice carried the weight of decades of sisterhood about to end. "I was at your birthday dinner 6 weeks ago, Patricia. You made that lemon chicken you always make. The one with capers. We split 2 bottles of that Spanish red you love. You laughed so hard at your own joke about the neighbor's dog that you snorted wine through your nose, the way you always have." Gloria's hands were folded precisely on the table. "You were not sick. You were never sick. And you sat across from this man at Thanksgiving and let him carve the turkey and call you Mama P, while you helped steal everything he'd built." She slid a notarized document across the polished wood. "I did not come here for you," she said. "I came here for him, because somebody in this family owes him that much." Patricia reached for her sister's arm. Gloria stepped sideways, the movement casual but deliberate, the way someone avoids brushing against a stranger on a crowded street. Darius turned to Amber. His voice remained steady, unstrained. "I told you who I was from the beginning. Working-class Atlanta. Ironworker's son. Everything earned. Nothing given. I gave you everything I built, because I believed in us." The civil suit was filed this morning. The DA has the referral. Dion is cooperating. He placed the divorce petition on the table between them. The paper made a soft sound against the wood, like a foundation settling into its final form. "I don't need an apology or an explanation," he said. "Just your signature and the door." He folded his hands and waited, as patient as steel. The morning after the confrontation, Darius's phone lit up with Sandra's name. He answered on the first ring. "Amber's attorney made contact an hour ago," Sandra said without preamble. "They know what we have. They're not going to fight this." The civil machinery moved with the ruthless efficiency of a well-designed system. Sandra filed for summary judgment, presenting an architecture of evidence so precise it left no room for meaningful defense. Amber's LLC documentation, Clint's forensic analysis mapping every dollar's path, Gloria's notarized affidavit destroying Patricia's medical claims, and Darius's crystal-clear recording from Patricia's doorstep. The court's order came down like steel beams locking into place: $487,000 in full restitution, plus compound interest from the date of first transfer, plus all legal fees. The Buckhead apartment, Amber's planned escape hatch, was attached and liquidated within weeks. Then the criminal consequences landed. The DA's office, armed with Dion's detailed cooperation, filed wire fraud and theft by deception charges against both Amber and Patricia. Amber's attorney, seeing the weight of evidence and Dion's testimony, advised accepting the plea offer: suspended sentence, 5 years of probation, and a criminal record that would shadow every job application, rental agreement, and background check for the rest of her life. Patricia's collapse was architectural in its totality. The phone records Sandra subpoenaed told their own story. 847 calls and texts between mother and daughter during the 14 weeks of active fraud. Not a passive participant, an operational partner. The court found her jointly and severally liable for the entire judgment. The dismantling proceeded with mechanical precision. Her Decatur home, the stage for so many performances of illness, went to foreclosure auction, selling for $218,000 in a rushed sale. Her 2019 Camry was levied and liquidated for $9,400. Her savings account, $34,000 accumulated over decades, vanished into garnishment in a single day. Under Georgia's willful misconduct provisions, 15% of her Social Security income was garnished indefinitely. The remaining judgment balance of roughly $225,000 began accruing post-judgment interest, creating a financial shadow that would follow her permanently, appearing on every credit check, blocking every rental application above basic subsistence level, flagging every employment background screen. Patricia retreated to Savannah, to her cousin Bertrice's spare room. The arrangement came with clear terms: temporary housing conditional on financial contribution. But Patricia, her income reduced to garnished Social Security, could contribute nothing. The relationship deteriorated over 4 months of mounting tension until Bertrice finally said the words out loud: "You need to find somewhere else." That somewhere else was a subsidized senior housing unit in a part of Savannah that Patricia would have dismissed as unthinkable a year earlier. The walls were thin, the carpet was worn. The neighbors were not the sort she was accustomed to claiming as peers. The Whitfield family's withdrawal happened without announcement or confrontation. Gloria never called. Gloria's children, who had once competed for Aunt Patricia's attention at family gatherings, went silent. Christmas cards stopped. Birthday calls ceased. Text messages went unanswered. The family simply became unavailable, one by one, until the silence was complete. Meanwhile, Darius retained the house he had designed. The partial satisfaction of the civil judgment through Amber and Patricia's liquidated assets restored enough equity for favorable refinancing terms. He accepted the Charlotte project, not because he needed it now, but because he wanted it. New city, new challenge, clean slate. On a Wednesday afternoon, Darius sat across from Sandra's desk one final time. The divorce decree lay between them, 30 pages of legal language that dissolved 7 years of performed devotion into clean, precise finality. He signed his name in black ink, each letter carefully formed. Sandra extended her hand across the desk. "It's done," she said simply. Darius shook her hand firmly, collected his copy of the documents, and walked out of her office into an unremarkable autumn afternoon. The air was cool. Traffic moved steadily. The world continued its ordinary rotation, indifferent to the weight that had just lifted from his shoulders. He was free. 14 months after signing the divorce papers, Darius stood on the roof deck of the Morrison, a 20-story mixed-use development in Charlotte's South End that he had helped design from foundation to facade. The evening air carried October's first real chill as the sun began its descent behind the city skyline, painting the glass towers in shades of amber and gold. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Clint, texting that he'd arrived at the hotel. They had dinner reservations at a steakhouse downtown in an hour. Darius smiled, remembering how Clint had insisted on visiting this weekend, claiming he needed to inspect the structural integrity of Charlotte's restaurant scene. The restaurant was warm and dimly lit, all dark wood and leather. They ordered bourbon and caught up on the mundane stuff first. Clint's new office expansion, the upcoming Georgia-Florida game, mutual friends back in Atlanta. It felt normal. Good normal. Walter Grimes sent a message through Sandra's office last week, Clint mentioned casually, cutting into his ribeye. Just 2 lines. I heard what happened. Thank you for finishing it. Darius nodded, taking a slow sip of bourbon. Sandra sent back 3 words for me. Take care of yourself. Clean, Clint said. Simple. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Clint spoke again, his tone deliberately casual. Heard some news about Patricia through the grapevine. She's 7 months into that subsidized unit in Savannah now. Darius's fork paused briefly over his plate, then continued its motion. Applied for a greeter position at some home goods store, Clint continued. Background check pulled up the civil judgment. Application denied. Tried 2 more places after that. Same result. The judgment follows her, Darius said quietly. That's what it was designed to do. Clint nodded, then added, she sent a letter to the Atlanta house about 6 weeks ago. Handwritten. 2 pages. The fork moved steadily, precisely. Sandra mentioned it. Yeah. Said it was mostly explanation disguised as apology. Ended with a request for you to talk to Sandra about the garnishment. Clint took a drink. Sandra filed it away. Said you were already in Charlotte by then. The restaurant's soft lighting caught the edge of Darius's water glass as he reached for it. That's right. Want to know what it actually said? The real words? Darius picked up his fork again, the motion smooth and deliberate. No. Clint nodded once, and the conversation shifted to the Braves' playoff chances. Sunday morning brought Evelyn's weekly call, right on schedule. Darius was at his kitchen counter, coffee in hand, morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown apartment. Are you eating? Evelyn asked, as she always did. Yes, ma'am. Regular meals and everything. Are you happy? Darius considered the question with the same careful attention he gave to load calculations. I'm building toward it, he said finally. That's the right answer, Evelyn replied, and he could hear her smile through the phone. After they hung up, Darius's mind drifted to Priya, the lead architect on the Morrison project. She had asked him to lunch 3 times now, casual invitations delivered with direct eyes and a quiet confidence that matched his own. He had said yes once, 2 weeks ago. The conversation had been easy, professional but warm. She hadn't seemed impressed or intimidated by his measured responses and careful pauses. She had simply matched his rhythm, as natural as breath. He was considering saying yes again. Later that evening, after Clint had headed back to his hotel to catch an early flight, Darius returned to the roof deck. The city lights were coming on one by one, like stars emerging in reverse. Below him, the Morrison stood solid and true. Every beam, every joint, every calculation proven right. He thought about his father, 30 years on iron, coming home with steel dust in his clothes and wisdom in his words. Son, He had said once, "You can build something that lasts, or something that looks like it lasts. Most people can't tell the difference. You can. That's your job." Looking out over the Charlotte skyline, at the building he had helped bring into being, Darius felt the truth of those words settle into his bones like concrete setting. He thought, "I can tell the difference. That has always been my job." I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.